Welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, and as we continue our five-part series looking at our todays and yesterdays, today we're going to look at the topic of yesterday controlling today. In our last lesson, we talked specifically about today and yesterday and what that looks like when they meet. So today, let's focus very specifically on yesterday controlling today. There's a specific cluster of yesterday events, such as emotions, exposures, that become the overarching umbrella in today's life transactions. There is a cluster of positive events, positive emotions, positive experiences also, and positive people from yesterday. And these are all factors in clusters. There's a cluster of negative events, negative emotions, negative experiences, and negative people from yesterday. So when we look at these specific clusters of the emotions, the exposures, the people under the umbrella, we must then break them into two component parts, the positive and the negative. Now, to the cluster that the one has received the greatest reinforcement, that's going to be the cluster through which your yesterdays are going to be controlled by your todays. So what happens is, if today is regulated by negative, then we know the primary cluster that you were more influenced through on yesterday. If your today is influenced greater by positive, then also you know the greater extent of the influence of your yesterday. The individual who accepts responsibility for the early development of shaping yesterday is also responsible for the shaping of today in the life of the dependents. So whoever shaped your yesterday, for the most part, also takes responsibility to a degree of what your today look like until it becomes a modified day. Let me give you 2 or 3 points on this. Were those responsible for shaping your yesterday available to you in the yesterday at an emotional level, a financial level, a social level, or a spiritual level that was positive or negative? Were those responsible for the shaping of your yesterday? Were they happy as they assisted you in your yesterday? Or were they sad in their assisting of your yesterday? What did the yesterday of those responsible for shaping your today truthfully look like? What is your today like? This is where an individual must examine himself or herself. What did the yesterday of the people who were of the greatest influence in your shaping, what did their yesterdays look like? What were their emotions? What were their behaviors? What was their contribution to your welfare? What was their contribution to the family constellation? Was it more enjoyable or was it more painful? And unless there has been some modification to the negative contributions from the individual who is the significant supporter of you, your yesterdays, in essence, are going to control your today. And the control of today can either be positive or it might be negative, depending on whether or not you've released from your today the negatives of the yesterday. As we continue with this study of yesterday and today, I want to spend some time looking at a passage in the book of Acts, the 9th chapter, verses 1 through 5. And I want to show you a Bible character who was allowing his yesterday to regulate his today. But his today could have been a positive day, an excellent day. But he was stuck in those who regulated his past. Acts 9, verses 1 through 5. Saul, still breathing threatenings and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked from him letters for the Damascus synagogues, in order that, if he found any who were of the way, either men or women, he might lead them bound to Jerusalem. Now, what's regulating Paul's today thinking? It's the yesterday events. Israel, for the most part, never embraced Jesus as the Messiah. And even in Acts chapter 2, on that great Pentecost day, when the apostles stood up to preach Christ, for the most part, the Jerusalem Jews rejected the Lord. Even as Paul was consenting to the death of Stephen in the 7th chapter of the book of Acts, even as the church is being scattered abroad in the 8th chapter of the book of Acts, Paul is living in the behaviors that's taught to him from his yesterdays. So by the time you get to chapter 9, this same apostle is going to be breathing threatenings and murders against the disciples of the Lord. The apostle Paul did not start the breathing of threats and murders against the disciples of the Lord. That was a learned response. That was a learned behavior. His emotions toward the disciples of the Lord had been modeled before him through the generations. So in his today, he will pick up the behaviors of those learned from his yesterdays. And as he neared Damascus, a light from heaven suddenly flashed around him. This light flashes not in his yesterday, but it flashes around him in the present tense, in his today. And he fell to the ground, not yesterday, but in his today. And he finally hears from heaven, not in his yesterday, but he must hear directly from heaven in his today. And the today voice from heaven, not the today voice from his past, but he finally hears a new voice from heaven, and it says, Saul, why are you persecuting me? In essence, it's saying, why do you keep day by day, when a new opportunity presents itself, a new day, why do you keep doing to me what was done in the yesterday? And it is hard for you to do today what was done yesterday. And not until Saul comes to the realization that he was allowing those from his yesterday to control his today was he able to change his own today. Every person has the ability to assess their yesterday influencers. And until there's an honest assessment of those who molded our yesterdays into todays, and no matter what the relationship may be or was in the yesterdays, a conscious effort must be made according to the Lord's purpose and the Lord's will to let the todays of our lives be the most prosperous and enjoyable moments of our existence. I will see you back in class again tomorrow. Don't be late and don't skip class.